Hey guys, my name is Jeremy with thewarriorsolution.com. In this quick video, I'm going to show you how to install a new trigger made by Tyrant Designs. Now, Tyrant did provide this trigger to me for free. I am not being paid to push the product or anything like that for you. It's mainly just going to be a how to install video, as well as my general, first impressions and things like that, as I normally do. The first step is always going to be to make sure that the firearm you're working on is empty, unloaded, and safe to work with. And this Glock is completely unloaded. I have no ammo anywhere on the table or anywhere close by or anything like that. Some tools you need to get your trigger changed out on your Glock is going to be some kind of punch. This is a few different examples. Ideally a non-marring hammer. That means that the surface of the hammer is a weaker material than the surface of the firearm, so that you don't accidentally damage and scratch up your nice pretty gun. These are super cheap and available all over the place. I'll leave links to everything here that you see in case you need to pick one of those up. Another tool you'll want is something to elevate the parts up off the table so you can actually push the pins through. Obviously a roll of tape works just fine if you don't have a dedicated armorer's block like this one. This is the Real Avid Smart Bench block, and it's got just some quality of life features to make things a little bit easier, as well as a magnet built into the bottom. These are about 14 bucks on Amazon. It's not necessary, it's just handy and really nice to have. If you don't have one of those and you don't want to mess with it, just a simple roll of tape will work fine. Just something so that you can get the gun up off the table to be able to push the pins through without actually jamming pins into the table surface. In order to remove your slide, what you're going to do is basically put your right hand over the top of the slide, pull back slightly, and then pull this lever straight down towards the trigger. That lever is your slide lock lever or slide takedown lever, whatever you want to call it. Once you get it past the back here, you will have to pull the trigger. That's why it's very important to make sure the gun is unloaded. Once you pull the trigger, the slide will come right off. In your frame, you're going to have different pins. On this frame, this is a Gen 3 Glock, so I only have 2 pins here and here holding my trigger bar assembly, and my slide release lever in place. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and punch out these 2 pins. If you're kind of struggling to get this top trigger pin out, what you can do is take an empty magazine, standard capacity magazine, and insert it, and what's going to happen is it's going to push that slide lever up just slightly and take some of the pressure off that pin so it can pop out of the groove. There we go. That pin is kind of annoying to work with. See these 2 little grooves here? Those hold your slide lock lever in place. So it can be a little bit of a challenge to get those out. Now, since this is a Gen 3 Glock, I've only got 1 other pin to work with or mess with. So that's going to be back here. This pin is holding the back of the trigger bar assembly in place. And I'm just going to push that right out. There we go. So once you get your pins out, whether it's 2 or 3, depending on the generation of Glock that you have, now what you're going to do is raise this right here up so that you can get your trigger and your trigger bar assembly out of the frame. So what I'm going to use to do that is just a simple flathead screwdriver. Just get up underneath, and this is, I'm applying very minimal pressure here. And that's going to slide right up and out, like so. Set that to the side. And now you can see the whole trigger bar, and the back of the trigger here, the whole assembly will come right out of the pistol. So if you pull straight up, it'll all come out in one piece, like so. And now we can set our frame to the side. This is the part that we're going to be changing. Tyrant Designs does have options for triggers with trigger bars. This particular trigger is just an aluminum replacement for the standard plastic Glock trigger. This is going to be the new trigger. It does have the trigger safety just like the regular standard issue Glock trigger. It just happens to have a mostly flat face and is machined out of aluminum versus the standard plastic Glock trigger. That top pin that you see there, that is what's actually holding the trigger onto the trigger bar. The interesting thing is if you flip the trigger over, there is no exit point for that pin. So what we're going to do is actually punch that pin through the trigger and create a new hole for it. You can also take a small drill bit and drill a hole if you want. It shouldn't take all that much force to drive it through though. If you want to take your trigger bar out of the rest of the trigger assembly here, what you can do is angle it slightly away like so, and then tilt up. Be careful when you pull that out because there is a spring right here and that part can come out. So now we can set this part aside and then you have just your bar and your trigger. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. It's just an optional step. If you're having an exceptionally difficult time using your little non-marring hammer, you could temporarily bring in your BFH and give that a go. This is a nail. There we go. So there you can see the pin pushed through the opposite side of the trigger. That doesn't, ruin the trigger or anything. You could still reinstall this and use it again if you wanted to. So I'm just going to push that pin the rest of the way. There we go. And now we have our standard Glock trigger off of our trigger bar. And now we can install the Tyrant Designs trigger. The trigger has two little Allen screws here. One holds the trigger safety and the spring in there. You can see that spring. This top screw right here is the one we're after. Inside the package that the trigger came in, there's actually a small Allen wrench that will fit that screw. So I'm just going to take that screw out. And there you can see the screw. So looking at the trigger here from the back, you have two grooves. The groove here on the left, this is your trigger safety. You can see the spring in there. The groove on the right here is where your trigger bar is actually going to slide in. Get our screw through there. Tighten it down. Doesn't have to be crazy super tight. And there we go. So now we have the Tyrant Designs trigger installed on the standard issue Glock trigger bar. Now I'm going to put it all back together. So I've got the back half of my trigger assembly here. In order to put this back in, all I'm doing is angling the bar this way and then coming in basically at kind of a steep angle vertically and horizontally. The top part of the cross there will slide into the slot that you see right here. The part of the trigger bar that kind of looks like the check mark there, this part here, is going to go down into this block. So I'm pushing down to compress the spring, rotating in, and now my trigger bar is back where it belongs. So I'm going to take my frame, slide the whole trigger assembly back in place. There we go. And now basically just do the opposite of what you did to get the whole thing apart. So I'm going to take this metal part here. So this part is going to slide right here, like so. It just slides right down. And then take your slide, release. That slide lock lever is going to go between the trigger here and the frame right into that groove there. And the hole in the lever, that hole is going to coincide with the pin that we punched out. So you get it slid down the left side of the trigger like so. See. So now I'm going to take my trigger pin. You can tell it's a trigger pin because it has those two little grooves in it there to secure your slide lock lever. And I'm going to go from right to left. And you don't need to be in a super big hurry for this part. You just kind of, there's a lot of different parts and pieces that need to be lined up in there for things to go well. So just take your time, make sure you get everything lined up. I'm going to take my block here and just gently tap on this as I kind of move things around and get things lined up in there. There we go. So what I did there is just hold everything in place and then just push down on the block there. Rear pin right here. And make sure it's even on both sides. So once you get those two pins back in place, all you're going to do is reassemble your slide. Pulling it all the way back till it clicks. And there we go. That is the Tyrant Designs trigger for your Glock handgun. Whenever you change out parts on a firearm, you want to take it to a range and actually test fire it, make sure everything is working as it should. Make sure you didn't forget anything, leave any parts laying on the table, all that good stuff. But one thing to note about this particular trigger, it is not going to change the weight of the trigger from the factory feel. This happens to be a retired police duty gun, so the trigger is a duty weight, so it's extremely heavy and kind of junky. But the trigger now is pretty sweet. Tyrant Designs trigger. Links are in the description for everything that you saw, and that's going to do it for this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment, shoot me an email with any questions you have about anything guns, gear related, whatever. I will do my best to help you out. That very top link will take you to the affiliate links page on my website, where you'll find all of the various brands and stuff that I am affiliated with. So if you're planning on doing any shopping for any kind of you know, check out that page and you'll find everything you're looking for. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.